Well, we're going to move on into our next topic, and we're going to go to a Big 12 kind of a showdown. But before we talk about the actual game, I want to look at one of the teams in this game. And the Texas Longhorns right now, they jumped out to a 2-0 start and beat Notre Dame week 1, shockingly. And we're all like, whoa, is Texas here? Well, now losers of 2 straight, losing at Cal, which I think they should have won because the guy dropped the ball at the goal line, didn't get in because there was no immediate recovery. The ref said that the game should have ended. It was bullshit. They should have got another possession, should have been able to win that game. And then they just lost to Oklahoma State. Like, I have no answer, like no argument for Oklahoma State winning that game. But Longhorns are 2-2 after 4. They're going into number 20 Oklahoma this week for the Red River shootout, the Red River rivalry. And the one thing I wanted to look at, Brandon, is yet again, Charlie Strong looks like he's on the hot seat, but is he? Because Texas has said they will not make a move mid-season on Charlie Strong. And the one thing I want to ask you is this a boy who cried wolf situation? I feel like every single season, maybe it's because it's been last year and this year, by the time we get to this point in the season, everyone's calling for Charlie Strong's head.
I don't disagree with you at all. I think that this is one of those things that kind of needs to come to an end. And I'm not saying with his coaching coming to an end.
Okay. I was going to ask that.
I think it's this calling for his head, like you said, and calling for his job. I mean, I think that you take a look at it. In game 1, he beat no one knew at the time that they were going to be as bad as they were, but a number 10 ranked Notre Dame team. You take them to double overtime and you win 50-47. You beat, well, I was going to say you didn't beat Cal on the road. You should have. You should have beat Cal on the road. That's that game that you were talking about mentioning as you were opening the segment. 50-43 there. You lose to Oklahoma State in a bad way last week. I think that you really turn it all around with a win against Oklahoma this weekend. I think it's simple as that. And I know that may not be simple. This Oklahoma team, it has been an underperforming team. I really don't think, Ricky, you said it before we even came on, they barely beat TCU. I think that this definitely is going to be a game that Texas can win. It's a game Texas needs to win. Because if they can do that, then they can put a lot of that all to bed. Because then that will put Oklahoma and Texas at 1-1 in the conference, 3-2 overall. 3-2 overall for Texas, 2-3 overall then for Oklahoma. So that would bump Texas ahead of them. That would be huge because I think that Oklahoma, even though they had fallen off and they're nowhere near where they were last season, you beat a team that went to the playoffs last year. I think that will be very big for the Texas Longhorns. Definitely something that they can do.
Well, and the reason why I say that we have to stop this, we have to stop like, oh, Charlie Strong should be fired, is because to me, are the Longhorns a bad team? No. Are they in a shit situation? No. They lost 2 games. They lost to a pissed off, I'm going to call them a pissed off Oklahoma State team because Oklahoma State also played in a game that they should have won. And that was the Central Michigan game because it was a great play, but apparently it shouldn't have happened. Just like Texas lost that game against Cal when it's part of the rules, but I'm just going to say it's BS. It's complete BS that there needs to be an immediate recovery. If he drops the ball before going into the end zone, then it should stop right there. It should stop right there. Possession gets thrown to the other team. And the reason why I say that is kind of old man Ricky. Like, if you're going to drop the ball before going into the end zone, your team doesn't deserve to get the ball back. You don't deserve to get the ball back because you didn't hang on to that ball. You didn't. It wasn't precious to you getting it into the end zone, but I digress. That's not the point. The point is they have a freshman quarterback in Shane Buechele. Firing Charlie Strong and bringing in somebody else is not going to be good for Buechele's growth. And I'm not talking like an NFL standpoint, like, oh, his progression to possibly the NFL. I'm talking just as a success for your team because if he's able to be under Charlie Strong, you get that same system. You get to work in it next year. You get to work in it in the year after. And next year, The way I see it is let's have him have this year. Let's have him have next year. And then that junior year with Buechele, then let's see what they're doing. Because to me, it's all about that progression because you do have a freshman quarterback. You basically have a guy coming straight out of high school playing collegiate football as your main quarterback. And I know Texas fans are going, but wait, we have Tyron Swoops. To me, that's a little bit of it too. Yes, you're making the two quarterback thing work, but I think Shane Buechele is going to take that next step when he doesn't have a guy behind him taking snaps away from him, because I feel like this two quarterback system is just to make Swoops happy so that he doesn't become a cancer in the locker room.
And Shane Buechele, you look at what this young kid has done this season, 8 touchdowns on the year, only 3 interceptions, and he is getting close to 1,000 yards. He's also added a touchdown on the ground and a little under 100 yards there. So I think that this Shane Buechele really a good quarterback, and I think that you want to keep that consistent for him if you can. Mm-hmm. And when I say keep that consistent, I'm talking about the head coach, because we've talked about it before. I know I've brought it up before. You don't want to see a guy getting all these different head coaches, starting off with this system, then coming and having a new guy come in and start a completely different system. I think that you want to be able to try and stay consistent, but right now for Charlie Strong, it's the defense. I think it's not necessarily offense, because you take a look, a couple of the games that I mentioned, they put up 50 points in game 1, 41 in game 2, 50 game 3, 43 in game 3, and 31 in game number 4. However, when they put up 50, they gave up 47. When they put up 43, they gave up 50. They put up 31, they gave up 49. It's that defense. It is that defense that needs to happen. Here's my thing. At Notre Dame,
you do know you're talking about defense for a Big 12 team, right?
I do.
You are like, that's kind of a little hypocritical. They don't play defense in the Big 12.
Yes, you know that. Everyone knows that. I let people know that on a weekly basis. But here's the thing, is that you need to be able to play some defense. Mm-hmm. And right now, you take a look at Notre Dame. Yes, have people called for Brian Kelly to be fired? Yeah, they certainly have. But who was the first guy to go for them? Brian Van Gorder, because they weren't playing well defensively. They weren't playing well anyway, actually. But he left, and he was fired because they needed to have a change. They needed to have a change. Something needed to be different. Do you do that at Texas? Why are you calling for Charlie Strong when you should be calling for a different defensive scheme? Maybe that means bringing in a defensive coordinator who, hell, if you give up 30 points every game, you still win all of the games. You would, if you literally gave up 30 points in every game so far this season, you would have won them all.
The one thing I'm thinking is I do agree that a change has to be made. I don't know if that change is necessarily getting rid of a coach. It could be something like you said. It could just be changing a scheme, changing something so that you can do something else. And the first thing I thought of was, and this was just me thinking off the top of my head, I was like, well, Les Miles is out there. And then I kind of thought to myself, I'm like, no, that wouldn't work because Ricky, you're an idiot. He's an offensive-minded coach. He was, before coming to LSU, when he was with Oklahoma State, he was a tight end coach for the Cowboys and then an offensive coordinator for OK State. So that wouldn't necessarily work. But I do want to bring Les into this discussion because of the people that are calling for Charlie Strong's head. I know both you and me have said it needs to stop. Charlie Strong should stay as the Texas head coach, but the people who are probably like, fire Charlie Strong, bring in Les Miles, do they have any ground to stand on? Do they have any ground to stand on whatsoever?
I don't think that necessarily makes a whole lot of sense right now at this point in the season, because I think that as much as you may want to go after and say, oh yeah, Les Miles, he's gonna be so much better and this and that, and I don't know if Les necessarily wants to be going to a Texas team. He's coming from the SEC, not. I just don't. I don't know if that's what Texas would be looking for. I don't know if that's what Les would be looking for. I think that those are two different schemes. Wouldn't you say, Ricky? It's definitely different mindsets.
The thing I think about is I don't even think about schemes. I don't even think about X's and O's. The thing that it would work best for Texas, if that were the case, is Les Miles is a big name, and when you get that big name coach in that program like Texas, that'll pull kids in, and that's all boosters care about.
But
that's
guess
all
what?
they care about. But
they were ready.
You should care about X's and O's.
They were ready to fire him at LSU.
Mm-hmm.
He was a big name. He brings people in. He's got one of the best recruiting classes. They still got rid of him. Because they needed a change. They wanted to have a change, and at the end of the day, finally, that went all the way up to the head coach. And people can argue, is it right, is it wrong? But at the same time, in response to what you're saying, I think that, it's not always the case of bringing in a big name. And I think that after a while, the big name wears off, it wears off that you've got the big name. You could bring in Nick Saban. You could bring in Nick Saban, and if he can't do anything with your team, after a while, I don't give a shit if you have Barack Obama as your coach. He ain't winning. I think that that's like the biggest thing. And you can bring in names all you want, but you've got to be able to see the production on the field.
Well, with me, Texas, they're not what they used to be. They're not the Mac Brown Longhorns. It's not that, I kind of almost saw Texas with their own network, and they kind of built themselves, I want to say the evil empire, which is the Yankees, but not the evil empire part. They were just the Yankees of college football. Everybody you would see that was just like a casual football fan had a Longhorn shirt, had a Longhorn hat. Why are you a Longhorn fan? Oh, they're a good team. Kind of like, why are you a Yankee fan, but you're not in New York? Oh, they're a good team. That's what they were in college football. And to kind of end with the actual game, I think Texas has a real good shot in this one. And I think the one thing that this defense needs to do is just take Baker Mayfield out of the game. You may say easier said than done, but Oklahoma hasn't been the same Oklahoma team that we saw last season. The one thing that I find interesting is this is going back to Oklahoma's game from week 5 when they just pulled out a win against TCU. Coach Gary Patterson of the Longhorns was upset that Kenny Hill got called for a grounding on the drive that ultimately failed in 4 plays and just sealed the Sooner victory. And I found it funny that he talks about the officials, then kind of brings Baker Mayfield into it. And if you guys are like, well, why would he bring Baker Mayfield into it? Mayfield in the past was recruited by TCU and said to reporters, and it was put in news articles that, Coach Patterson kind of hung me out to dry on National Signing Day, which Patterson said wasn't true. But here's the exact quote from this past week. He said, "We talk about sportsmanship in this game, and I've got a quarterback that writes a whole article on me, how I treated him wrong, but I can't talk about officials. Bottom line to this is I wasn't happy with the officiating." So he kind of brought in Baker Mayfield. Is that something you read into it? Oh, well, the Longhorns aren't sportsmen? No, I just think this is a guy upset with a call that happened. But the point is, Oklahoma was just in a close game. This is very winnable for Texas, and I think they need to win this one because, Brandon, like you said, if they beat Oklahoma, kind of all is forgotten with these last 2 games.
I think that in a sense it would be. Is it all forgotten? Maybe not all, but I think it will definitely. It'll be like the kid going to his mom after he knows he did something wrong, going, "Mom, hey, I'm really sorry." "Oh, it's okay, Johnny." That's how it would be. It would basically be, "Okay, that's fine. But if you did it again soon, like soon after,
then we'll have some repercussions.
Then I'm going to remember, and I'm going to be really upset then. But I think that right now that for Texas, that's the biggest thing for them right now. They need to be able to get this win this weekend because it is of utmost importance. Not only would you get the win, you would knock off a ranked team.
And we're going to move on into our next segment. But before we do, this is where you guys let us know down below what you think in the comment section. What do you think about Texas? What do you think about Charlie Strong? What do you think about the matchup at hand?